a WikiVidi Documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Moana, 2016 film. Moana is a 2016 American 3D computer-animated musical fantasy adventure film produced by Walt Disney Animation Studios and released by Walt Disney Pictures. It is the 56th Disney animated feature film. Directed by Clements and John Musker, co-directed by Don Hall and Chris Williams, the film introduces Auli'i Cravalho as Moana and features the voices of Dwayne Johnson, Rachel House, Temuera Morrison, Jemaine Clement, Nicole Scherzinger, and Alan Tudyk. The film features songs written by Lin-Manuel Miranda and Opetaia Foa'i, and orchestral score composed by Mark Mancina. The film tells the story of Moana, the strong-willed daughter of a chief of a Polynesian village, who is chosen by the ocean itself to reunite a mystical relic with a goddess. When a blight strikes her island, Moana sets sail in search of Maui, a legendary demigod, in the hope of returning the heart of Te Fiti and saving her people. Moana was released theatrically in the United States on November 23, 2016 to generally positive reviews from critics, with particular praise going towards its animation, music, and vocal performances. The film went on to gross over $643 million worldwide. Along with Zootopia, it marked the first time since 2002 that Walt Disney Animation Studios released two feature films in the same year. It received 2 Academy Award nominations at the 89th Academy Awards, one for Best Animated Feature and another for Best Original Song. Plot. On the Polynesian island of Motunui, the inhabitants worship the goddess Te Fiti, who brought life to the ocean, using a Pounamu stone as her heart and the source of her power. Maui, the shape-shifting demigod and master of sailing, steals the heart to give humanity the power of creation. However, Te Fiti disintegrates, and Maui is attacked by Te Ka, a volcanic demon, losing both his magical giant fishhook and the heart to the depths. A millennium later, Moana, daughter of Motunui's chief Tui, is chosen by the ocean to return the heart to Te Fiti. However, Tui arrives and takes Moana away, causing her to lose the heart. Tui and Moana's mother Sina tried to keep her away from the ocean to prepare for her ascension as the island's chief. Years later, after Moana has grown older, a blight strikes the island, rotting the coconuts and dwindling the number of fish caught. Moana suggests going beyond the island's reef to find more fish, but Tui forbids it. Sina explains to Moana that Tui and his best friend tried going beyond the reef, but the latter perished. Moana and her pet pig Pua try conquering the reef, but are overpowered by the ocean's tides and end up shipwrecked back on Motunui. Moana's grandmother Tala shows her a secret cave, where a number of ships are hidden, revealing to Moana that their people used to be voyagers. Tala explains they stopped when Maui stole Te Fiti's heart, and that Te Ka's darkness is poisoning the island, but it can be cured if Moana and Maui return the heart to Te Fiti, which she gives to Moana. Tala falls ill shortly after and dies, but not before encouraging Moana to go and fulfill her destiny. Moana sets sail on a drua found in the cavern, accidentally accompanied by her dim-witted rooster Heihei. Moana is caught in a typhoon and shipwrecked on an island where she finds the stranded Maui, who traps her and steals the Kamakau, but Moana catches up to him with help from the ocean. She demands that Maui return the heart, but he refuses. Maui is accompanied by a sentient, mini Maui, Tatu, acting as his conscience. They are attacked by Kakamora, coconut-armored pirates, who seek to steal the heart, but Moana and Maui outwit them. Moana realizes Maui is no longer a hero, and convinces him to redeem himself by returning the heart. Maui first needs to obtain his magical fishhook, which is located in Lalatai, the realm of monsters, and is in the possession of Tamatoa, a giant, greedy coconut crab. Moana enters Tamatoa's lair, using herself as live bait to distract him and allowing Maui to climb atop the crab and retrieve his fishhook. However, Maui discovers he cannot control his shapeshifting and loses self-confidence, quickly becoming overpowered by Tamatoa. Moana's quick thinking allows them to escape with Maui's hook. Maui reveals that his first tattoo was earned when his mortal parents rejected him. After reassurance from Moana, Maui teaches her the art of sailing and regains control of his powers. The two arrive at Te Fiti Island, only to be attacked by Te Ka, who badly damages Maui's fishhook. Tired of all the trials and tribulations, and fearful he will lose his hook, and therefore his power, Maui angrily abandons Moana, who tearfully asks the ocean to find someone else to restore the heart. The ocean obliges and takes the heart from Moana. Tala's spirit appears, inspiring Moana to find her true calling. Moana decides to fulfill her destiny, retrieves the heart, and sails back to confront Te Ka. Maui returns, convinced by his Maui to change his mind, and buys Moana time to reach Te Fiti by fighting Te Ka, destroying his fishhook in the process. Moana discovers Te Fiti is missing, and realizes Te Ka is Te Fiti without her heart. Moana tells the ocean to clear a path while singing, allowing her to restore Te Fiti's heart, transforming her back to normal. Te Fiti then heals the ocean and islands of Te Ka's poison. Maui apologizes to Te Fiti, who forgivingly restores his fishhook and goes into a deep sleep. Moana bids farewell to Maui, returning home where she reunites with her parents. Moana takes up her role as chief and wayfinder, leading her people on a voyage, accompanied from afar by Maui and Tala. In a post-credits scene, Temuera, still stuck on his back, addresses the audience, knowing they would help if he was named Sebastian, and sang in a Jamaican accent. Development. After directing The Princess and the Frog, Clements and Musker started working on an adaptation of Terry Pratchett's Mort, but problems with acquiring the necessary film rights prevented them from continuing with that project. To avoid a recurrence of that issue, they pitched 3 original ideas. The genesis of one of those ideas occurred in 2011, when Musker began reading up on Polynesian mythology, and learned of the heroic exploits of the demigod Maui. Intrigued with the rich culture of Polynesia, he felt it would be a suitable subject for an animated film. Shortly thereafter, Musker and Clements wrote a treatment and pitched it to John Lasseter, who recommended that both of them should go on research trips. Accordingly, in 2012, Clements and Musker went on research trips to Fiji, Samoa, and Tahiti to meet the people of the South Pacific Ocean and learn about their culture. At first, they had planned to make the film entirely about Maui, but their initial research trips inspired Clements to pitch a new idea focused on the young daughter of a chief. Clements and Musker were fascinated to learn during their research that the people of Polynesia abruptly stopped making long-distance voyages about 3,000 years ago. Their navigational traditions predated those of European explorers, beginning around 300 CE. Native people of the Pacific possessed knowledge of the world and their place in it prior to the incursion of foreigners. For example, Kanaka Maoli were well aware of the existence of faraway islands, had names for these places, and were interested in exploring them to benefit their societies. This voyaging heritage was made possible by a geographical knowledge system based on individual perspective rather than the European cardinal direction system. The reasons for the halt of this voyaging tradition remain unknown, but scholars have offered climate change and resulting shifts in ocean currents and wind patterns as one possible explanation. Native peoples of the Pacific resumed voyaging again 1,000 years later. Clements and Musker set the film at the end of that era, about 2,000 years ago, on a fictional island in the central Pacific Ocean, which drew inspiration from elements of the real-life island nations of Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga. Over the 5 years it took to develop and produce the film, Clements and Musker recruited experts from across the South Pacific to form an Oceanic Story Trust, who consulted on the film's cultural accuracy and sensitivity as the story evolved through 9 versions. The trust responded negatively, for example, to a depiction of Maui as bald, and to a proposed scene in which Moana threw a tantrum by throwing coconuts. In response, Maui was reworked with long hair and the coconut scene was scrapped. Te Kā was referred to in early drafts of the film as Te Po, a reference to the Maori goddess Hainui Te Po, who was originally the life-giving goddess Haintaitama, but became the goddess of death upon discovering that her husband the god Dane was also her father. Maui set out to defeat her in order to bring immortality to humans, but failed and was himself killed. During the 2015 D23 Expos panel for Disney's slate of upcoming animated films, Moana's last name was given as Wailiki, but that name was not retained in the final film. Writing: Taika Waititi wrote the initial screenplay. The first draft focused on Moana as the sole daughter in a family with 5 or 6 brothers, in which gender played into the story. However, the brothers and gender-based theme were deleted from the story, as the directors thought Moana's journey should be about finding herself. A subsequent draft presented Moana's father as the one who wanted to resume navigation, but it was rewritten to have him oppose navigation so he would not overshadow Moana. Instead, Pamela Ribbon came up with the idea of a grandmother character for the film, who would serve as a mentor linking Moana to ancient traditions. Another version focused on Moana rescuing her father, who had been lost at sea. The film's story changed drastically during the development phase, and that idea ultimately survived only as a subtle element of the father's backstory. Aaron and Jordan Candle joined the project during a critical period to help deepen the emotional story architecture of the film. They are credited with developing the core relationship between Moana and Maui, the prologue, the Cave of the Wayfinders, the Kakamora, and the collector crab Tamatoa. Jared Bush received sole credit as the writer of the final version of the screenplay. Like most Disney and Pixar animated films, several major story problems were identified in 2015 only after the film had already transitioned from development into production, but computer-generated films tend to have much shorter production schedules and much larger animation teams than traditionally animated films. Since Clements and Musker were already working 12-hour days directing such a large team of animators, Don Hall and Chris Williams came on board as co-directors to help fix the film's story issues. The scene in which Maui and Moana encounter the Kakamora is an intentional homage to Mad Max: Fury Road. Casting. After the filmmakers sat through auditions of hundreds of candidates from across the Pacific, 14-year-old high school freshman Auli'i Cravalho was cast as the lead character Moana. At that point in time, the design of Moana's face and personality was already complete, and Cravalho's obvious physical resemblance to her character was simply a coincidence. During animation production, Disney animators were able to integrate some of Cravalho's mannerisms into Moana's behavior as depicted on screen. The majority of the film's cast members are of Polynesian descent. Auli'i Cravalho and Nicole Scherzinger were born in Hawaii and are of native Hawaiian heritage. Dwayne Johnson, Oscar Kitely, and Troy Polamalu are of Samoan heritage, and New Zealand-born Rachel House, Temuera Morrison, and Jemaine Clement are of Maori heritage. Animation. Moana is Clements and Musker's first fully computer-animated film. One of the reasons for using computer animation was that the environment, including the ocean, benefited much more from the use of CGI as opposed to traditional animation. The filmmakers have also suggested that three-dimensional computer animation is well suited to the beautiful sculpturing of the faces of the people of the South Pacific. Eric Goldberg worked on the hand-drawn animation used to depict Maui's sentient tattoos. During early development, the filmmakers considered the possibility of making the film with hand-drawn traditional animation, but only a few early animation tests were made in that style. In the final cut, only Maui's tattoos are hand-drawn. Moana was produced in makeshift quarters in a giant warehouse in North Hollywood, while Disney Animation's headquarters building in Burbank was being renovated. Musker observed that Moana was similar in that respect to The Little Mermaid, which was produced in a warehouse in Glendale. Production wrapped on October 20, 2016. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?